Good morning, ma'am.
Morning, ma'am.
Good 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 morning, everyone. Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes.
Anji. So, beta, yesterday we have done till the moderate phase, right?
Yes, ma'am.
चलो, let's start. Moderates याद है ना जो plea petition believe करते थे. Shall I start with moderates again or extremist phase only?
Ma'am, moderate.
चलो, let's start with moderates.
Students, from 1885, a new age began in the history of India. That year, an all Indian political institution took birth. It was named Congress. In its starting phase for at least 20 years, we find Congress was moderate in its objectives and methods. One of Congress's aims was that Indians should also play a role voice in the formation of the government. They should be given official posts too. It demanded that the legislative councils should be set up in every province of India, and it should be given more power. It also demanded that the civil service examinations should be held in India along with Britain. This demand was an attack on the Britishers' policy of racism. The British thought that only white people could be placed on high posts, and Indians were not eligible to hold responsibilities. They believed that Indians were savage and uneducated and therefore should be subjugated. In addition to this, the British government thought The Indianization of the administration might drain their wealth. Moreover, as most of the officials were British, they sent a major part of their salary to their home, Britain. If Indians were allotted these posts, it would certainly affect their status. The next
Okay, बताइए. So one of the Congress's goals was to form the government. बताइए इसमें कोई है incorrect statement?
Ma'am,
No, I
executive
think we have done this.
Yeah, we have done this, but she had some issues. मैं फिर से start. हाँ जी, executive और क्या गलत है इसमें?
Ma'am, Britain.
Okay.
demand of the All India Congress Party was that the judiciary should be separated from the executive body. The Arms Act should be replaced and people should be given the freedom of speech and expression. The Indian National Congress paid attention to the economic issues of the country also. In its opinion, the main cause of India's poverty was the British rule. Under British rule, high revenue was imposed on lands. The peasants and landowners sometimes found themselves unable to pay such high taxes. The grain that was produced was exported to Britain. This export was responsible for the food shortage in India. Therefore, Congress wanted a reduction in revenue, a cut in military expenses, and more funds for irrigation. It raised many issues in which issues of salt tax, issues of Indian laborers abroad, and the issues of forest dwellers were included. Though the Congress was a body of educated and elite people, it stood for all. Whether they were big industrialists, wealthy zamindars, or the man on the lowest strata of the society. These moderate leaders wanted to make the public aware of the unjust policies of the British rulers. They wanted that the public should open its eyes and ears and see how this British rule was destroying the economy of the country. For this purpose, they organized meetings, gave speeches, and sent their representatives to every nook and corner of the country. They believed that the British would respect and honor their idea of freedom and justice. So it was their duty to put the demands of the Indian people before the government. And they did so.
बताइए बेटा. Moderates want that the dash should open its eyes.
Public.
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 Okay. To see how British rule was dash the dash.
Destroying.
चलिए. The British rule public हो गया, then the British rule was dash and dash, destroying and exploiting.
Destroying the economy.
Non-economy.
They wanted to make the public
Aware.
Aware.
of the dash
Aware.
policies.
Unjust policies of the British rulers.
British.
Yes.
British.
Right.
So, now let's have a quick recap for this session for your better understanding.
Okay. So now let's talk about the extremists.
Dear children, we all have heard the name of the Indian National Congress. It is the oldest political
Can anyone
party of
tell
India.
me, can anyone of you tell me in which year Congress was formed?
Ma'am, may I?
Yes,
1885.
very good, 1885. And who started it?
Ma'am,
AO.
AOU.
AOU. And
AOU.
who was the first president of
Ma'am,
Congress?
WC Banerjee.
WC Banerjee. WC Banerjee.
Well done, very good.
It also led the freedom struggle of the country in different phases. It started with the moderate phase, which lasted till around 1905, when the extremist phase started.
Good morning,
In
ma'am.
this topic, we are going to discuss the extremist phase of Indian National Congress. We know that the British rule in India adversely affected many sections of Indian society, hence to represent and redress their grievances. On the political front, the Indian National Congress was created in 1885. In the beginning, while raising many of its demands, the Congress was moderate in its functions, as it had much faith in the British government. Congress members demanded that Indians should be given participation in the government and administration. It also tried to mobilize public opinion on these issues. But do you think that all Congress leaders agreed on the policies of the moderates of the Congress towards the colonial government? No, not everybody was happy with the Congress moderates. In fact, this mentality of the Congress raised questions during the 1890s. Leaders like Bipin Chandra Pal in Bengal, Bal Gangadhar Tilak in Maharashtra, and Lala Lajpat Rai in Punjab disliked the politics of bread policy of Congress. They emphasized on self-reliance. They urged people to trust their strength and not to be at the mercy of the government. They raised their voice for Swaraj or self-rule. In fact, one of the major extremist leaders, Bal Gangadhar Tilak, raised the famous slogan, "Freedom is my birthright, and I shall have it." Tilak was also the editor of a popular Marathi newspaper, Kesari, which was known for criticizing the British rule. Having learned
बताइए, Congress struggled for freedom in different phases. Extremists had firm faith in the British government.
No.
No, ma'am.
No.
No.
about the rise of extremists in the Congress, would it be fair to say that this was the only major event in the context of Indian nationalism in the 20th century? No, that would not be correct. In fact, another big event during that period was the partition of Bengal in 1905. At that time, Bengal used to be the largest province of the British Empire in India, as it comprised not only entire Bengal, but also Bihar as well as some parts of Odisha. Clearly, this step taken by the British under the pretext of administrative convenience was taken to divide Bengal, as it was the main center of Indian nationalism at that time. To ensure this, Bengal was separated into West and East Bengal, the latter being merged with Assam. Understandably, many Indians were not happy with this decision of the government, and all the leaders of the Congress party opposed it. Hence, many mass protests were held against this decision, which resulted in the birth of the Swadeshi movement. Although it started in Bengal, it soon spread to other regions. As the name symbolizes, the Swadeshi movement was meant to encourage Indians, boycott British goods and even institutions. It encouraged people to be self-reliant, use Indian goods, start Swadeshi businesses, inculcate national education, speak Indian languages, etc.
Yeah. So next question is, a big event was the partition of Bengal in which year?
Ma'am, 1905.
1905.
1905.
At that time, Dash used to be
Ma'am,
the
Bengal.
largest province.
Bengal.
And Bengal.
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 As it not only comprised entire Bengal but also
Bihar.
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 as well
Bihar.
as some parts of.
Ma'am, Odisha.
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 Correct. Very good. Now we'll start next testers.
While talking about the extremist days of Indian National Congress, we must remember that all the radical leaders not only called for boycott of British institutions and goods, but also suggested that revolutionary violence was essential to overthrow British rule.
ये किसका मानना था बेटा?
Now that we have learned,
Who believed that
Extremist.
revolutionary violence was very important?
Extremist.
Extremists. Can you name some extremists?
Bal Gangadhar Tilak,
Extremist.
Subhash Chandra Bose.
Yes, Lal Bal Pal, all three of them. Subhash Chandra Bose, etc.
Ma'am, Lala
about the partition of Bengal and its outcome. Do you know about other major developments that took place in the country in this period? Yes, another interesting incident that happened with the other developments in the early 20th century was the formation of the All India Muslim League at Dhaka in 1906. It was formed
Do you know what this All India Muslim League is responsible for?
For
the
partition.
partition.
Yes, the partition of India.
by some leading Muslim landlords and Nawabs who supported the partition of Bengal. The All India Muslim League also had certain other demands. It asked for separate electorates.
What is the meaning of separate electorates? Can you tell me the meaning of separate electorates?
Ma'am, separate voting.
Yeah, they want to do the voting separately where only the Muslims will vote for the Muslims, right? So Gandhiji was completely against it because he remember, if we'll give them separate electorate, they will, after a couple of years, they will also separate themselves from India. So that's why
India.
Gandhi did not want to do that. But Britishers were adding fuel to the fire.
For Muslims and also demanded reserved seats for Muslims in the councils, where they were to be elected by Muslim voters. Another major development around this time was the Congress split of 1907 between the moderates and the radicals. This took place because while all Congress leaders opposed the British, some were in favor of force or violence, while some, especially moderates, were not. The latter was especially opposed to boycotts. After the split, the Congress was dominated by the moderates. Eventually, however, the two groups reunited in December 1915. Around this time, for the sake of a unified representative government in India, the Congress Party and the Muslim League decided to work together. To serve this purpose, they signed the historic Lucknow Pact in 1916. Now, here is a quick recap of this session for your better understanding.
Ma'am, what was the Lucknow Pact about?
See in the Lucknow Pact. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So both इन लोगों ने कांग्रेस और मुस्लिम ने लखनऊ पैक्ट में डिसीजन साइन किया था लाइक दे डिमांड टू डिमांड यूनिफाइड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव गवर्नमेंट कि अब जो गवर्नमेंट होगी हमारी उसमें हम सबका रिप्रेजेंटेशन इक्वल रखेंगे और ऐसा नहीं होगा कि सिर्फ किसी एक ही उसका ज्यादा है कम्युनिटी का ज्यादा है राइट सो विल ट्राई टू प्रोवाइड एवरीबॉडीज इक्वल रिप्रेजेंटेशन ओके
Ma'am, I think British people gave separate electorates to Muslim League in
they
Bengal.
wanted to give but Gandhiji resented that. So now let's talk about the growth of the mass movement.
We all know that the British
बेटा वर्ल्ड वॉर वन कब हुई थी
1914.
1814.
2.
अच्छा 19 1945 or 38.
I'm 1914 to 1918.
In India, which lasted for nearly 2 centuries, was oppressive and exploitative towards Indians. How do you think Indians reacted to this? In response to this, the Indian nationalist movement was started in the late 19th century, which continued to expand during the early years of the 20th century. By the end of World War I, the Indian national movement became a mass movement, witnessing the participation of groups like peasants, tribals, students, women, and certain Indian business groups. What impact do you think World War I had on Indians? During World War I, the increased British defense expenditure was financed through increased taxation of both Indian masses and businesses. This and demands for war supplies led to inflation, which aggravated the dire situation of Indian masses. But were all groups in India adversely affected during World War I? No. During the war, due to the demands for industrial goods like jute bags, cloth, rails, etc., imports into India declined. Due to this, many Indian businesses and industries prospered. Many of them wanted to have more development opportunities. During the war, many Indian villagers were recruited as soldiers to fight abroad for the British cause. After the war, many returnees became aware of colonial exploitation in Asia and Africa and decided to oppose it. Apart from other factors, people began to draw inspiration from the Russian Revolution of 1917, which taught them to include peasants and workers in their struggle against the British. We know that by the end of World War I, the Indian national movement became a mass movement. But who do you think emerged as a major leader during this phase? Yes, it was Mahatma Gandhi, who in 1915 had returned from South Africa, where he had led a non-violent movement against racism.
बताइए. Who amongst the following became aware of the colonial exploitation in Asia and Africa and decided to oppose it?
I'm A.
Ma'am,
Happy?
Students,
A.
C.
Ma'am C. Ma'am
B.
B. Ma'am B.
Ma'am,
Ma'am B.
बताइए.
After coming to India, Gandhiji toured India for a year, where he interacted with the people, understanding their needs and situation. He intervened in movements at Champaran in 1917 and Khera in 1918. He also led a mill workers' strike in Ahmedabad in 1918. During these agitations, he met nationalists like Dr. Rajendra Prasad and Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. We have learnt about Gandhiji's emergence as a nationalist leader in India, which event led to his rise as a major nationalist figure. To understand this, we must know about an important incident associated with Indian nationalism after World War I, about which we will learn in the next video.
बताइए बेटा. Gandhiji understood people's needs and situation. Okay. Then he intervened in movements at Khera in 1917 and Chapa in 1918. Yes or no?
ma'am,
Ma'am
yes.
yes.
Ma'am.
Ma'am,
Yes.
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 ये तो yes ही होना चाहिए. चलो, we'll speak about it.
Let's summarize the concepts we have learned.
Yes, बेटा. So during the World War One, Indian people were highly, ये हमने अभी रिविजन कर लिया, right? This is very important part. ठीक है, यहाँ से बहुत important part शुरू होता है. The Rowlatt Act
In
and
the
the
previous
Satyagraha.
video, we had learned about Gandhi's rise as an important leader in India during World War I. In this topic, we are going to learn about his rise to prominence as a major nationalist figure and as a mass leader. In 1919, Gandhiji gave a call to people to join protests against the Rowlatt Act. But why do you think he and other Indians opposed the Rowlatt Act? This was because the act suppressed people's fundamental rights and strengthened police powers. Many leaders, including Gandhi and Muhammad Ali Jinnah, opposed the government's measure to curb people's rights, calling the act devilish and tyrannical. Gandhiji called on Indians to observe the date of 6 April 1919 as a day of non-violent opposition, humiliation and prayer, and hartals or strikes. At this time, many satyagraha sabhas or gatherings were set up to launch the movement. Yet, despite its massive popularity, the Rowlatt Satyagraha was largely confined to the urban areas. Many protests and strikes were organized throughout India, which were brutally suppressed by the government. Can you recall one such major event that highlighted the brutal nature of British rule in India? Yes, one such incident took place on 30th April 1919, on the occasion of Baisakhi at Amritsar, when the infamous Jallianwala Bagh massacre took place, where thousands of unarmed Indians were fired upon by General Dutt. The resultant anger against British rule was best expressed by Rabindranath Tagore, who renounced his knighthood. During the Rowlatt Satyagraha, many Indian nationalists trying to organize joint Hindu-Muslim unity against British rule. This was supported by Gandhiji, who saw India as a land of its inhabitants, irrespective of their religious affiliation. He wanted all Indians, including Hindus and Muslims, to unitedly fight for a just cause. Thus, under Mahatma Gandhi, the Indian national movement became a truly mass-based struggle. This was to be a decisive factor, whose eventual outcome would be independence of India.
Okay. Now, kids, after the Jallianwala massacre, the resultant anger against the British rule was best expressed by Rabindranath Tagore, who renounced his title as
Ma'am, as night. Ma'am, something was that.
what's that something? Tell me, children, what was the title given to Rabindranath Tagore which he was resenting, which he was giving back?
Ma'am, symbolic act of protest.
The title given to
Ma'am,
Rabindranath.
Knighted.
ma'am, knighthood.
Knighthood.
Ma'am, knighthood.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, knighthood.
Ma'am, what was Rowlatt Act about?
The Rowlatt Act was basically that ब्रिटिशर्स खुद को ना अपने आप को ज्यादा पावर्स दे रहे थे इन डिफरेंट डिफरेंट सिनेरियोज। सो रॉलेट एक्ट में ये हुआ था पास कि अगर कोई भी इंडियन जो है वो प्रोटेस्ट करता है बिना मतलब ब्रिटिशर्स के अगेंस्ट जाके, और ब्रिटिशर्स ने उस चीज को अलाउ नहीं कर रखा है, तो अगर ब्रिटिशर्स चाहें तो किसी को भी दे कैन पिक अप एंड दे कैन पुट दैट
मैम
पर्सन
अरेस्ट हिम।
इन द जेल फॉर एटलीस्ट 2 years विदाउट एनी ट्रायल। कोई ट्रायल नहीं होगा, कुछ नहीं होगा, एंड दे वुड बी डायरेक्टली अरेस्टेड। दिस वाज द रॉलेट एक्ट।
Now, let's summarize the concepts we have learned.
गाइस रॉलेट एक्ट और जलियांवाला बाग मसाकर समझ स्टार्ट करने समझ में आया, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है ये।
यस
Yes,
मैम।
ma'am.
लेट्स स्टार्ट विद द खिलाफत मूवमेंट।
Hello, children. We know that the national struggle in India lasted a long period, covering many phases. Hindus and Muslims both have been inhabitants of India for several centuries, even during the British rule. Mahatma Gandhi wanted them to be united for any just cause, and this unity was apparent during the Rowlatt Satyagraha. Let's now discuss another movement where this unity was seen. That is the Khilafat movement here. Similar to the Rowlatt Satyagraha, the unity of Hindus and Muslims was also seen during the Khilafat agitation. It started in 1920 when the British imposed a harsh treaty on the Turkish Sultan, who had been defeated in World War I. The Sultan of Turkey was called Khalifa. The anger of the people, especially Indian Muslims, was high, as it had taken place around the time of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Under the Khilafat movement, Muslims demanded that the Khalifa should have control over the Islamic sacred places in the former Ottoman Empire. The main leaders of the Khilafat agitation were Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. Both met Gandhi.
वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट नेम्स, मोहम्मद अली एंड शौकत अली, राइट। सो अभी क्या था, गांधी जी को लगा कि दिस वाज वेरी ग्रेट चांस, गांधी जी सॉ दैट अंडर वेयर राइट। सो दिस वाज द चांस जहाँ पे इन लोग को दिखा कि ये तो गोल्डन चांस है। यहाँ पे गांधी को लगा वी कैन ब्रिंग द हिंदूज एंड मुस्लिम्स अंडर द सेम अम्ब्रेला। सो खिलाफत मूवमेंट क्या हुआ था कि यू नो अबाउट द ओटोमन एम्पायर।
No, ma'am.
ओटोमन एम्पायर का नाम सुने?
Ma'am, it was around Turkey.
Yes, it was around Turkey. It was like Ottoman was the Islamic head, ठीक है, of Muslims, है ना। तो यहाँ पे क्या किया ब्रिटिशर्स ने, ओटोमन मतलब वहाँ जो टर्की के एरिया को ऑक्यूपाई करने के बाद जो एम्परर था, जो मुस्लिम्स का रिलीजियस हेड था, उसको डिफीट करके उससे उसकी सारी की सारी पावर छीन ली। तो यहाँ पे मुस्लिम्स जो थे दे वर वेरी मतलब वेरी एंटी ब्रिटिशर्स की, ये क्या किया हमारे रिलीजियस हेड को भी नहीं बख्शा और उनके साथ भी गलत किया, ये और वो। So they were somewhere starting to protest against Britishers. As soon as Gandhi decided to get to know this, he said like, let's work together, no? You are also against them, we are also against them. Then let's become friends and fight them together. So उन्होंने कहा इससे अच्छा कोई और मौका नहीं मिलेगा हिंदू और मुस्लिम को साथ में लाने। चलो पढ़ते हैं।
And demanded that he should support them and initiate a full-fledged non-cooperation movement. Gandhiji agreed, and he asked Congress to campaign against the Punjab wrongs, that is the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, the Khilafat wrongs, and demand Swaraj.
कि भाई उन्होंने सबने साथ में आके कि तुमने जलियांवाला बाग में जो गलत किया है, तुमने वहाँ ओटोमन टर्की के साथ जो गलत किया है, इस सब के अगेंस्ट लेट्स वर्क टुगेदर। उनसे कहा कि हम आप इस सब के अगेंस्ट जॉब करो, सही नहीं है ना, हमें स्वराज चाहिए, वी वांट सेल्फ रूल नाउ।
It was during 1921, 1922 that the resultant non-cooperation movement picked up momentum.
For which sacred Islamic places Muslims demanded for retaining control of Khalifa?
Ottoman
मैम
Empire.
ओटोमन एम्पायर।
Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire.
Ottoman Empire.
young people of India were involved in the non-cooperation movement. Many students left their schools and colleges. Famous lawyers, including Motilal Nehru, Chittaranjan Das, and C. Rajgopalachari, etc., renounced their legal practices. People surrendered their titles and boycotted legislatures. Foreign clothes were burned. All these things were the beginning of a fierce storm. Do you wish to know more about people's initiatives during the movement? Well, people were generally non-violent in many cases, but at some places, their protests turned violent. Patidar peasants in Kheda raised their voices against the revenue system of the British in a non-violent manner. The people
Peasants.
of Andhra and interior
Yes, Ira.
Ma'am, what are patidar peasant?
Patidar peasants, like say community of the peasants.
Okay, ma'am.
Tamil Nadu launched a campaign against liquor shops. A large number of forest satyagrahas were also launched at that time. In Guntur, in Andhra Pradesh, tribals and peasants refused to pay the grazing fee.
मतलब इन सबने डेवलप करना स्टार्ट किया कि हम आपको कॉपरेट नहीं करेंगे, आपके यहाँ जॉब नहीं करेंगे, आपको टैक्स नहीं पे करेंगे, है ना? That's how they were participating in non-cooperation.
Cattle into the forests. He protested against the restrictions imposed on them by the British on the access and use of the forests. Gandhiji was their hope. Many peasants believed that if they supported Swaraj, they would be able to enjoy Gandhi Raj.
People started confusing Swaraj with Gandhi. मतलब उन्होंने लगा कि गांधी का हमने हेल्प की, गांधी जी के साथ कुछ भी किया तो हमें तो इंडिपेंडेंस मिल ही जाएगी. मतलब डिफरेंट पीपल हैड डिफरेंट मीनिंग्स ऑफ स्वराज. सबके लिए स्वराज का मतलब अलग अलग था. एवरीबडी वाज अंडरस्टैंडिंग इट इन देयर ओन वे. मतलब कि सबको लगा था कि गांधी राज आ गया तो स्वराज आ जाएगा. Which is not that easy, but yeah, that's not how people were confusing it with.
Muslim traders and the peasants of Sindh also took part in the Khilafat agitation, very enthusiastically. The unity of Hindus and Muslims was also seen in Bengal, which served as a power source to the national movements.
Hi, wait. The people of coastal Andhra and interior Tamil Nadu launched a campaign against liquor shops. True or false?
I'm true.
I'm true.
अरे यार मैंने कैंसिल कर दिया. अभी रिज्यूम करने के लिए से रिज्यूम करेंगे इसको. पॉज क्यों हो गया ये?
At that time, the Akali agitation of the Sikhs was also taking place in Punjab. They protested against the corrupt Mahants in Gurudwaras, who were appointed by the British to manage the Gurudwaras. This protest was very closely linked to the non-cooperation movement. The slogan Gandhi Maharaj Ki Jai was heard in Assam, where tea laborers wanted a hike in their wages. They left the British-owned plantations where they had worked. Gandhiji's popularity was so high that in many Assamese Vaishnava songs, at that time, the name Gandhi Raja was used to substitute references to Krishna. Here is a quick recap of what we have learned so far.
So children understood it till here? समझ में आया यहाँ तक?
Yes, ma'am.
अब बस Gandhi and Eyes of the Indians part is left in this, right? Which we'll be doing in the school, hopefully. Right, children?
Yes,
Ma'am,
ma'am.
Hopefully.
the question.